thought I was doing the right thing, just helping out my family when they needed it. No big deal, cover a bill here, send some money there. I had a good job, no kids, no debts. I never really said no when someone asked for help. And I didn't think much of it, honestly. That's what you do when you're the reliable one, right? You show up, you fix things. But then one night, after a regular family dinner, I checked my savings account and saw less than $500, $487 to be exact. I stared at the screen, convinced there had to be a mistake. My entire life savings, gone. At first I assumed it was fraud. Maybe I'd been hacked or someone had stolen my identity. I called the bank in a panic, but then the details started to unfold, and the truth hit harder than anything I was prepared for. My own sister and her husband had taken it, without asking, through a shared laptop with my info saved, and when I confronted them, they laughed, literally laughed, said I didn't really need it. Just like that. No guilt, no apology, like I was some kind of walking ATM they didn't need permission to use. That moment was the spark that lit a fire I didn't even know was waiting to burn, because here's the thing, this wasn't just a one-time betrayal. This was years in the making, years of brushing things off, years of thinking I was keeping the peace when really I was just keeping myself small, quiet, useful. What would you do if the people you love the most turned out to be the ones who were quietly bleeding you dry? What if your kindness, your reliability, was being used against you, not by strangers, by your own family? This isn't a story about revenge. It's not about getting even. It's about waking up, about seeing the truth for what it is, even when it hurts. It's about finally realizing that being the strong one doesn't mean letting yourself be the doormat. This is what happened. After I reported my own family to the police, after years of keeping the peace, I finally chose to break it. And if you've ever felt like the only one holding things together, this story might sound a little too familiar. The number on the screen just stared back at me, 487,013. That was it. I refreshed the app 3 times, like maybe it was a glitch. I even restarted my phone. But nothing changed. All my savings, years of work, bonuses, freelance projects on the side, completely wiped out. I felt like the air got sucked out of the room. I wasn't even angry yet, just confused, numb. My first thought wasn't even, who did this? It was, how do I fix it? That's how deep the conditioning went. I didn't think of justice, I thought of damage control. But then I noticed the transfer history, the names, the dates, the IP address, all of it tied to our shared family laptop, the one Tara used regularly for work, the one Bryce had set up with all our auto logins for convenience. That's when it clicked. I wasn't hacked. I was robbed, and not by strangers, by people who had eaten dinner with me just hours before. So I asked, calmly. I wish I could say I exploded, but I didn't. I just asked Tara, "Hey, did you access my account?" She didn't even flinch. Bryce just gave me this smug look and shrugged. "We needed it more than you, man. You're doing fine." That sentence, "you're doing fine," as if that made it okay, as if my financial security somehow gave them the right to empty my account without even a conversation. No apology, no remorse, just entitlement. I looked around the room waiting for someone, anyone, to say it wasn't okay, but they all looked away. My mom bit her lip. My dad said nothing, like it wasn't even surprising to them, like this had always been an option on the table. They just hadn't told me. The silence hit harder than the theft. No one asked if I was okay. No one said, "We'll make it right." They just let it hang in the air like I was being dramatic. I realized in that moment that I wasn't just alone. I had probably always been. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not in a loud way. Quiet, like a seam finally splitting. After years of pressure, I didn't say much, just stood up, grabbed my coat and walked out the front door. The next morning I got a text from my mum, not asking if I was okay, not offering to talk, just, "Let's not make this into a bigger thing than it needs to be." That was it. Like I'd overreacted by walking out. Like having your life savings drained without permission was just a minor family hiccup. Then Tara chimed in, You've always had it easier. No kids, no loans, a great job. We're drowning, and you're over here crying about numbers on a screen. I didn't respond, but I reread those messages at least 10 times. Over and over, they turned it around. I wasn't the victim. I was the selfish one, the one who didn't understand what family meant. My father finally called later that day, and instead of asking what I needed, he said, "You know how hard things have been for them. They're just trying to survive." I said, "At my expense?" He paused, sighed, and said, "You'll bounce back, you always do." That sentence right there, that was the story of my entire relationship with this family. I'm the one who bounces back, the reliable one, the one who can take the hit and keep going. And they've built their comfort around that assumption. Around me. I sat alone in my apartment, phone on the table, messages still coming in, and I started replaying every moment that should have raised a red flag. The rent I covered when Tara couldn't afford it. The time Bryce's car broke down and I footed the repair bill just until payday, which never came. The emergency phone bills, the random Venmo requests, the guilt-tripping over holiday gifts, the "Can you spot me just this once?" That happens 5 times a year. Even when I'd say I was short, they'd push harder. Like I didn't have the right to say no. It all added up, and none of it had ever been acknowledged. Not a single thank you, not once. I used to think I was being generous. That helping was part of loving, but now it felt like I'd been conned. Slowly, systematically, like I'd been trained to believe this was normal. And maybe that was the worst part. Not that they took the money, but that they truly believed they were entitled to it. I used to tell myself I was just being supportive. That's what you do when you're doing okay and someone else isn't. I'd pick up the slack, help with rent, groceries, whatever. But looking back, none of it felt optional. Not really. When Tara lost her job a few years ago, I covered her. Rent for almost 6 months. Every month she said she'd pay me back when she got back on her feet. She never did. And after a while she just stopped bringing it up, like the debt had expired because she didn't feel like carrying it anymore. Then Bryce. He's never had steady work, always chasing some side hustle or startup that never made it past the idea phase. His emergencies were endless. Flat tires, broken phones, forgotten insurance payments. Somehow they always landed in my lap. And the weird part? No one ever asked with humility. It was always assumed, like they were placing an order. I remember one time I had just finished paying off a credit card. I mentioned it at dinner, feeling proud. My mom smiled and said, "That's great, honey. Now you can help out more without stressing. Not, good job. Not, you worked hard for that. Just an opening for new ways to give." They wrapped it all in emotional language. "We're family. You're doing this out of love." It's what good sons do. It didn't matter how much I gave. It was never seen as generosity. It was expected. Anything less was framed as selfish or cold. Even when I hinted that I was struggling, they'd brush it off. "It's how you always land on your feet," my dad would say. Or worse, "Don't make us feel guilty for needing help." They twisted it. My exhaustion became their burden to carry, and I swallowed it. Year after year, I kept my mouth shut. I told myself it was temporary, or that maybe I was just being too sensitive, that if I spoke up, I'd be the bad guy. So I stayed quiet. I told myself peace was better than conflict, that being needed meant I mattered. But under all of that silence, something darker was growing. Not just anger, but resentment. A slow, quiet fury that built every time they smiled at me, like I was lucky to be in a position to help, like I should be grateful to be used. And when that account hit 487, it wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the end of the lie I'd been telling myself for far too long. A few days passed and no one brought it up again. Not Tara, not Bryce, not my parents. It was like they'd decided the best way to move forward was to pretend nothing happened. I half expected an apology, a conversation, something. But silence was their answer. Business as usual. Tara texted me a meme one morning like everything was fine. No mention of the money. No attempt to talk about what she did. Just some dumb joke she found online. I didn't respond. She followed up with, You're not still mad, are you? It's not like we blew it on vacations. It went to bills. That sentence did something to me. I just stared at it, feeling my pulse in my teeth. It went to bills. As if that justified stealing. As if my savings were some communal pot they could dip into whenever they were behind. Not money I'd earned, not sacrifices I'd made, just a safety net for them to fall into without asking. I finally replied, just one sentence. You crossed a line I didn't think I had to draw. She read it, never replied. That weekend, I drove to my parents' house for what they called a family reset dinner. The table was set like nothing had happened. My mom made lasagna. My dad asked about work. Bryce cracked jokes like he hadn't gutted my finances a week ago. The delusion in that room was surreal. Tara poured herself a glass of wine, looked me dead in the eye, and said, I really think you're blowing this out of proportion. Nobody died. That was it, the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, but something inside me snapped. I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I just stood up, looked around the table and said, You all think this is normal. That's the scariest part. Mom tried to speak. I held up a hand and said, Don't, just listen. And then I told them flat out that I knew exactly what had happened, that I had every transaction saved and that I wasn't letting it slide. No more quiet, no more brushing it under the rug. I'd been passive for too long. I didn't say what I'd do next, but the message was clear. This wasn't over. After that dinner, I stopped answering texts, no calls, no visits. I needed space to think and to act. For the first time in my life, I decided to stop managing their feelings and start protecting mine. I went home and opened my laptop. I pulled bank statements, export histories, IP logins, everything. I matched dates, amounts, access times. I even cross-referenced with emails from Tara, where she'd accidentally logged into my account before, asking if I got a weird notification. All the red flags I'd ignored started piling up like evidence in a case I didn't want to believe. I had to build. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was focused, calm in a way that almost scared me. By the end of the weekend, I had a folder full of documents, screenshots, statements, emails, login histories. I took it to a local branch and filed an official fraud report. They walked me through the process, quietly, respectfully. It was the first time someone treated what happened to me like it mattered. The next step was the hardest. I handed it all over to the Financial Crimes Unit. The detective assigned to the case didn't flinch when I told him who the suspects were. He just said, Family fraud happens more than people think. You're not alone. That sentence hit harder than I expected. 2 weeks later, I asked my parents to meet. No Tara, no Bryce, just them and me. I told them I wanted to talk, that I was willing to sit down like adults. When I arrived, they were already tense. My dad kept checking his watch. My mom made tea, but didn't drink any. I sat across from them and calmly laid out everything, printouts, charts, even a spreadsheet color-coded by transaction. I walked them through each transfer, showed them how it traced back. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I presented facts. Just the truth on paper right in front of them. Then there was a knock at the door. 2 officers stepped inside, polite, direct. They had a warrant to collect devices. Tara's laptop, Bryce's phone, anything linked to the transfers. The room went cold. My mother's jaw clenched. My dad stood like he might protest, but he didn't. For once, no one interrupted me. No one talked over me. There was nothing left to say. I wasn't there to negotiate. I was there to draw the line they'd all ignored for years. The fallout came fast. The morning after the officers showed up, my phone lit up with calls. Missed. Calls from Tara, from my mom, even Bryce. I didn't answer any of them. I wasn't interested in hearing excuses, justifications, or guilt trips. I'd spent years listening. This time I chose silence. Later that day, I got a voicemail from my father, calm but strained. "You've really stirred things up," he said. "You didn't have to go this far." The implication was clear. What I did was worse than what they did, because I broke the unspoken rule. Family matters stay in the family. But I was done playing by those rules, the ones that protect abusers and punish boundaries. Tara sent a string of texts, first defensive, then panicked. "You don't understand. They're freezing everything." Then came the anger. You're ruining lives over money. No acknowledgement of what she'd done, no apology. Just rage that the consequences had arrived. That same week my mum emailed me, long emotional, full of passive-aggressive pity. We're all so disappointed in how you're handling this. Your sister is devastated. Bryce might lose his job. Your father is heartbroken. Every sentence was about how they felt, how my actions were hurting them, as if their actions hadn't led us here in the first place. I read every word, but I didn't reply. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix things. I wasn't trying to make peace or smooth things over. I was quiet, and in that silence they unraveled. They were used to me carrying the emotional load, explaining, calming, compromising. When I took that away, the whole system started to collapse. And it became obvious this family didn't run on love. It ran on control, and I had finally pulled the plug. My presence had always been their security blanket. Not just financially, but emotionally. I was the buffer, the one who absorbed their messes. Without me to absorb the impact, everything felt more real to them. Even distant relatives began to reach out, unsure what to say, clearly shaken. The story had spread, and not the version Tara tried to push. They thought I was bluffing, that I'd calm down and come back. But I wasn't bluffing. I was finished. After everything came crashing down, I disappeared for a while. I packed a small bag, left my apartment, and drove 3 hours out to my late grandmother's house. It had been sitting mostly empty since she passed, quiet, untouched, and full of memories that didn't hurt. It was the only place that felt truly neutral. No drama, no expectations, just stillness. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I turned off my phone, shut down my email, and let myself breathe. For the first time in years, no one was asking me for anything, and I didn't realize how heavy that silence would feel until I finally had it. The first few days were strange. I kept checking my phone out of habit, expecting some new crisis to land in my lap, but there was nothing. Just wind through the trees, creaky floorboards, and the sound of my own thoughts coming back into focus. I started sleeping through the night again. No stress dreams, no waking up in a panic about bills or guilt or texts I hadn't answered. I made coffee in the mornings, read books I hadn't touched in years, and just sat with myself. And in that stillness, something started to shift. I wasn't just grieving the loss of my money or even the betrayal. I was grieving a version of myself I had outgrown. The version that thought loyalty meant silence, that thought love meant endless self-sacrifice. That version of me had been trying so hard to earn peace by pleasing people who only took more the more I gave. I walked around the garden my grandmother used to tend, and for the first time in weeks I smiled without feeling guilty. I didn't owe anyone that smile. I wasn't performing, I was just here, alive, whole, starting over. I cleaned the kitchen, lit a candle she used to love, and wrote in a notebook for the first time in years. Not about what had happened, but about what I wanted. Peace, clarity, distance, boundaries. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew I couldn't go back. Not just to my family, but to the role I had played in it. That version of me was gone. And in his place was someone learning, maybe for the first time, what it meant to belong to himself. Leaving didn't stop them. If anything, it made them louder. Once they realized I wasn't coming back, not to talk, not to negotiate, not to work things out, the messages escalated. My mum sent a long chain of voice notes, her voice cracking as she talked about how she didn't raise me to be so heartless. She said she missed me. Then, 2 minutes later, she accused me of tearing the family apart. Tara, of course, flipped the script completely. You're doing this because you've always hated me. You were just waiting for a reason. Bryce sent one message that just said, "You'll regret this." No context, just a threat wrapped in a tantrum. They weren't reaching out to make things right. They were reaching out to regain control. And once I saw it for what it was, I stopped feeling guilty. I blocked most of their numbers. I changed my email. I got a new number. It felt drastic, but so was what they did. And honestly, it was the most peace I'd had in years. I started therapy. At first, I didn't even know what to say. I sat there and stared at the wall, feeling like I was making a big deal out of things. But my therapist didn't brush me off. She listened, and then she helped me name it: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, enmeshment, guilt conditioning. Words I'd never thought applied to me, but they did. Every week, I untangled a new knot I didn't even know existed. I talked about being the fixer, the responsible one, the easy child. I talked about how that identity had trapped me for most of my life, and how stepping away didn't feel like freedom at first. It felt like failure, until it didn't. I started running again, cooking for myself, playing music, small things that felt like mine. And slowly, the weight lifted. Not all at once, but enough. They kept reaching out, especially around holidays, trying to patch things up without ever really saying what needed to be said. But I didn't answer. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Not bitter, just finished. That distinction mattered more than I expected, because being done wasn't about hate. It was about peace. It had been a few months, enough time for the noise to die down, for the silence to become familiar. I wasn't checking my phone with dread anymore. I'd made peace with the fact that I might never speak to most of them again. And then, out of nowhere, I got a letter in the mail. It was handwritten, addressed to me by full name, in careful block letters. Inside was a short note and a check. It was from Lena. I hadn't even thought about her much during all this. She was Bryce's younger sister, quiet, never in the middle of anything. We weren't close, but we were never hostile. Just family by extension. The note was simple, but it floored me. She said she'd heard what happened and wasn't surprised. That she'd seen the way Tara and Bryce talked about me for years, like I was a resource, not a person. She wrote, "I always felt it was wrong. I just didn't know how to say anything. I'm sorry I didn't." Enclosed was a check, not for the full amount, not even close. But it wasn't about the money. It was a gesture, the acknowledgement. She said, "This is what I can afford. I know it won't fix anything, but you deserve to be seen as more than a wallet. You deserve to be seen. Period." I sat there at the kitchen table and cried, not because of the letter, but because of what it meant. For the first time, someone in the family saw it for what it was. No spinning, no guilt, just the truth. And that truth didn't come from a confrontation. It came quietly on paper, in Lena's own handwriting. It reminded me that even in the most toxic systems, there are people watching. People notice. People who may not speak up at the time, but they're still there. And sometimes, when you finally step out of the chaos, they show up. A few days later, she followed up with another letter, just to check in, just to say she hoped I was doing okay. It didn't erase what happened, but it made me feel less alone. And after everything, that meant more than I ever expected. I moved to Denver in the fall. New job, new city, new phone number. I didn't make a big announcement. I just packed my things, signed the lease, and went. No farewell dinner, no drama, just movement. The promotion came through a few weeks later. I'd applied months before, almost forgotten about it. But when I got the offer, something in me settled. I wasn't running anymore. I was choosing. That made all the difference. Denver was cold in a way I hadn't felt in a while, but it was clean, quiet. I'd go for long walks in the morning, bundled up with coffee, no destination, just space. I started meeting people, co-workers, neighbors, a barista who learned my name within a week. No one knew my history. No one had expectations. And that anonymity, it was freedom. I got a small apartment with big windows and no one else's energy in the walls. No reminders, no ghosts, just a blank slate. For the first time, everything in my space was mine, chosen, not inherited, not handed down, not guilt-bought. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped trying to make people understand why I left or what I'd been through. I didn't need to justify peace. I didn't need to prove I'd been hurt. I just lived. I planted a few herbs on the windowsill, set up a routine. Sundays became sacred. Quiet mornings, a slow breakfast, no obligations. I made playlists, bought candles, and took pictures just for myself. I still get messages from time to time. A thinking of you from my mom. A vague miss you from Tara. I don't respond. Not out of spite, but because I don't owe access to people who abused the privilege. Healing didn't happen in some big dramatic moment. It happened slowly, on Saturday mornings without tension, in grocery runs without a Venmo request after, in silence that didn't feel threatening. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just free. And if you've ever been the one holding everything together, quietly, thanklessly, maybe you'll understand the weight of finally letting go. Realizing your worth isn't tied to your usefulness. That love isn't supposed to cost you your self-respect. I used to think I was selfish for walking away. Now I know it was the most honest thing I've ever done. I was never their bank. I was always enough. I moved to Denver in the fall. New job, new city, new phone number. I didn't make a big announcement. I just packed my things, signed the lease and went. No farewell dinner, no drama, just movement. The promotion came through a few weeks later. I'd applied months before, almost forgotten about it. But when I got the offer, something in me settled. I wasn't running anymore. I was choosing. That made all the difference. Denver was cold in a way I hadn't felt in a while, but it was clean, quiet. I'd go for long walks in the morning, bundled up with coffee, no destination, just space. I started meeting people, co-workers, neighbors, a barista who learned my name within a week. No one knew my history. No one had expectations. And that anonymity, it was freedom. I got a small apartment with big windows and no one else's energy in the walls. No reminders, no ghosts, just a blank slate. For the first time, everything in my space was mine. Chosen, not inherited, not handed down, not guilt-bought. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped trying to make people understand why I left or what I'd been through. I didn't need to justify peace. I didn't need to prove I'd been hurt. I just lived. I planted a few herbs on the windowsill, set up a routine. Sundays became sacred. Quiet mornings, a slow breakfast, no obligations. I made playlists, bought candles and took pictures just for myself. I still get messages from time to time, a thinking of you from my mom, a vague miss you from Tara. I don't respond, not out of spite, but because I don't owe access to people who abuse the privilege. Healing didn't happen in some big dramatic moment. It happened slowly, on Saturday mornings without tension, in grocery runs without a Venmo request after, in silence that didn't feel threatening. I'm not angry anymore, I'm just free. And if you've ever been the one holding everything together, quietly, thanklessly, maybe you'll understand the weight of finally letting go. Realizing your worth isn't tied to your usefulness. That love isn't supposed to cost you your self-respect. I used to think I was selfish for walking away. Now I know it was the most honest thing I've ever done. I was never their bank. I was always enough.